how many of you believe that there's oxygen in the air we breathe? By show of hands. Right? Pretty much everyone. Now, how many of you have proved yourself that there's oxygen in the air that we breathe? Not a single one. I feel like there was a wise ass somewhere at the back and just put their hand down. And yet we believe this, right? And the reason is because we have so much faith, even in science. Science is pretty much based on faith, and faith in the people who educate us about it. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about today, trust and faith. So trust is defined as the firm belief in the reliability, truth, ability, or strength of someone or something, right? And faith is defined as the complete trust or the confidence in someone or something. Now, whether we realize it or not, we have tremendous amounts of trust and faith in the world around us. Take, for example, our doctors or even our bus drivers, right? Every time you step up on that bus, you're not saying, please don't let this be my last bus ride. I still haven't met my dream woman yet, right? That's not true. I say it all the time. But besides that, we put so much trust in these people. It's a complete trust, right? Now, trust and faith are interesting concepts. A lot of people deem them to be purely philosophical or spiritual, but they're also very biological. And I'm going to show you how. So the human hormone oxytocin, you're all from a medical school, you should know this, is commonly known as the love hormone, the cuddle hormone, or the trust hormone, right? It's regarded as one of the most important hormones for the procreation of the human species. And they say it's very responsible for us to find our ideal mate or also to create valuable social relationships. Now, personally, I'm a cuddle bunny, so I'm like 90% oxytocin and 10% water, I think. But that's besides the point. So scientist and famous TED presenter Paul Zak conducted an experiment with his subjects where they measured the levels of oxytocin and of trust, and this is what they found. That as people trusted more and had more faith in their partners and in their social systems around them, they naturally seemed to produce more oxytocin. And in people whose bodies just synthesized more oxytocin naturally, they seemed to trust people more. It's crazy. And concurrently, people who trusted people less just seemed to have less oxytocin. And this was not true just for people who knew each other or partners. This was also true for people who met strangers. Now, oxytocin was also found to increase a person's empathy, which is a very useful trait in building work together and also creating trust, right? According to a further report by Paul Zak and one by the Harvard Business Review, people who work at high-trust companies versus people who work at low-trust companies experience 74% less stress, 50% higher productivity, 106% more energy at work, 13% fewer sick days, 40% less burnout, and 29% more satisfied lives. My life is 29% more satisfied just reading those statistics. Just think back to yourselves of when you worked at a place in an environment. If it was a high-trust environment, you surely must have felt more productive. You would have felt like you had lesser stress at those workplaces. Think back to it. Now with trust and economics, right? On a graph measuring trust versus the GDP in the GDP per capita at countries, if you look at the graph in the lower quadrant, you find that countries that almost always had lower levels of interpersonal trust in their population almost always had lower GDPs per capita. It's amazing. Now, if you take Norway, for example, which, if you look at the graph, is that country which is almost outside the graph, and which was rated one of the best places to live in probably for decades in a row, has phenomenal interpersonal trust. And their GDP is one of the highest in the world, right? Now, if you think of trust and happiness, according to an article by the International Journal on Public Mental Health and Neurosciences, they found that when the levels of interpersonal trust increased in people, the levels of happiness increased significantly. And this was not true just for people who were from the same community. It was true for people between different communities, people who spoke different languages, people from different races. And I can tell you, from the city in India that I'm from, Bangalore, it was the most multicultural city, rated one of the happiest cities in the country, and it's because we had tremendous amounts of trust. So you see, it's so amazing. All we have to do is just trust more, and then we can be more happy, we can work better, we can have better quality of love and relationships. Everybody's smiling suddenly. They're like, wow, I should trust people more. And it's amazing. It's that simple. Now on to faith, right? So faith, as we've seen, is the complete trust or confidence in someone or something. The bus driver and the doctor earlier were good examples of faith, a complete trust. Children in their parents' care, if you think about it, is the perfect example of faith. Humanity and all of nature really has been created on this beautiful premise that these vulnerable little offspring come into this world with so much faith in them, in their parents, in their caretakers, to love them, nurture them, and create a beautiful life. Everybody's awing at the puppy picture. I know, it's super cute, right? Right, but faith perhaps relies on a more optimistic and spiritual principle than trust. And it relies on that belief that once you've done everything that you can, you have to have complete trust that everything is going to work out. And maybe I can tell you that from my personal story. So as a young child, football was always in my blood. And for your benefit, I'll try to call it soccer as much as I can. But at 19, I quit university to become a professional soccer player. Now, where I'm from in India, academics is revered, and sports is not looked upon as a lucrative career. So you can imagine it was hard. But I left school, and I was a distinction student, but I felt like my passion lay elsewhere. So I moved to a different city where I didn't speak the language, and my teammates could barely understand me, but it was to play this marvelous game. But life was really hard. I was by myself, and I had almost no friends, and my career was plagued by injury. I busted both my ankles, both my knees, my back, and I had a terrible injury with my hip, which ruptured 4 muscles in my hip. And I had a rare surgery, which basically made me retire at 22. Can you imagine that? At 22. There weren't even enough pictures of me by 22 to show that I played football. I think this was the one, maybe. But it was hard. And can you imagine what that amount of emotional and physical trauma does to like a young adult who's given up everything to pursue this dream? I basically felt like I had no purpose in life. I felt like there was no reason for me even to be around here. But that's when I met my mentor and my sports psychiatrist. And he always told me to keep my head up. And he was like, you're on this journey in life, and you know, it's all going to make sense. Now, I don't know about you, but any young adult who's been through that much trauma is just like, I don't want to listen to that mumbo jumbo, but I was like, I'll go through it. I'll see what comes of it. So I went on through my physical therapy, and what seemed like years of physical therapy, I would get bored at the therapist's office. And so I started to pick up their books, and I started to study the books that they were studying. And I started to think to myself, I love physiology. And if I could understand my body better, that means I could take care of myself better and I could recover sooner. And so that's what I did. And then I started to help my friends, my teammates, my family with all the knowledge I accumulated. And I said, stop. Maybe I could make a career out of this. So then I did all the relevant certifications that I needed, and I started off on my own initially, and I built this fitness brand. And in 2 years, without me knowing how, and purely by word of mouth, it grew to be one of the most successful fitness brands in the entire city. We had the highest customer retention rate, and we had the highest satisfaction rate in the city. And in 2 years, I helped so many people, improved so many people's self-esteem, and on a personal note, I made more money than any of my friends I grew up with, and any of my peers in the fitness industry. 100% success. And with that success, I got to travel around the world for almost a year and a half. I basically traveled to 30 countries, and I met so many friends in so many interesting places. But the point of me telling you this story is this. 3 years before I took that first flight to fly abroad, I remember laying in my bed crying. I was in so much pain that I could barely lie down. I could barely breathe because of how my hip was affected, and I couldn't even turn from side to side. All I could hear were the voices in my head telling me that I'd never make it, and all the I told you so's, right? My friends and family who said that it was a terrible idea. My dean at university when I quit, who said that if I quit to play professional soccer, that I'd never be anybody. It's hard. But then there were the voices of my mentor and all the people who loved me, who kept telling me that it would all work out, like I said. And I had so much faith in them. I had so much faith in these people telling me this, and so much faith in this one statement, that everything happens for a reason. And so I just kept moving forward, and the rest is of the story. So, you see, we don't have to be religious to have trust and faith. We just have to be alive. We just have to believe in someone, believe in something, believe in ourselves. But most importantly, we have to believe in a better future for ourselves and for our children that comes. Can we actually create a better future for our children and for the planet? Can we actually reverse issues like global warming and depression because of all the isolation that we have and social media and all the issues we face of being more disconnected even though we're more connected online? I completely have faith in humanity, and I completely have faith that we can change those things. As a revered Martin Luther King once said, faith is like taking the first step, even when you don't see the whole staircase. Thank you.